Joining us now on the Deseret First Credit Union Hotline is the host of Locked On Browns podcast, Jeff Lloyd, to discuss, you know it, Sione Takitaki. Jeff, welcome to BYU Sports Nation.
How you gentlemen doing today? Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. But here's the thing. Did the Cleveland Browns just have the greatest draft class of amazing names between Greedy Williams, Sione Takitaki, among others?
And Sheldrick Redwine?
Well, I mean, it always brings a little spice and a little value that you get some good names, but obviously, Takitaki turns out to be the players are hoping for. You can just kind of hear the chants, and with a crowd, obviously, all fired up on a Sunday afternoon, somebody makes a big play. The Takitaki chants will definitely be ringing through First Energy Stadium.
How does he fit among this linebacker group?
Well, I mean, the draft itself, look, they had two top headliners at the position in Devin White, Devin Bush. Obviously, both those players were off the board by pick 10. Then after that, that's where there was the great variance within, how everyone viewed the rest of the class. I think with Takitaki, he tested very well at the combine, which impressed. Most people had him as a day 3 guy. But his testing, obviously, showed that he was much better athletically than I think people had saw on his film, which probably helped him to the rise that he had. The Browns were to the point last season where they were signing street free agents at the linebacker position, and they were actually forced to play them at times. They had a good initial crew, but Joe Schobert missed a ton of time. Christian Kirksey, a captain for them, was injured a couple times before his season was over. So they really need depth at the position. And one of the things with Takitaki, with being the athletic player he is, he's physical. He's versatile, obviously, where he's played some time at the edge position in his days in Provo. So it's going to be a solid pick for this team who needed to start getting some more players at the linebacker position. Joe Schobert's going to come up for a contract here, after next season, and the way the linebackers did this cycle in free agency, financially they did very, very well. Could be in a position where Joe's worthy price tag might be too much for the Browns' interest.
Sione Takitaki was taken in the 3rd round. Mac Wilson from Alabama in the 5th. So linebacker is certainly an emphasis there for the Browns. How do you think Sione fits among the Browns linebackers, and do you see him getting playing time soon?
I believe he will. Obviously, they moved on from Jamie Collins. They did not sign a linebacker, through free agency. Obviously, they drafted 2 here in the draft. Sione Takitaki probably is the one who's probably a little bit more ready to go. An older guy. Mac Wilson's just a kid, just turned 21 the day he got drafted. But Sione, obviously, a little bit more established. The physicality is NFL ready right off the bat. Can get his feet wet in some special teams. He'll get to work with a guy like Joe Schobert, who was a 4th round pick as an outside guy with a pass rushing, background similar to Sione. So, if he can get with Joe and work, and Joe's become one of the better middle linebackers in the NFL, there'll be room because they're going to need help from the linebacker position. Time where
We've lost Jeff Lloyd.
The athleticism is leading him, but you bring in a guy like this who has no issue getting his nose dirty, can get off blocks, can cover some backs out of the backfield. This is desperately what they need, because there's going to be some coverage needed here, because the Browns are anticipating being ahead in a lot of these games, which means late 3rd quarter, 4th quarter, their opponents are going to be throwing the ball a ton against them.
Jeff Lloyd from Locked On Browns podcast with us on BYU Sports Nation. When a team takes a guy in the 3rd round, are they expecting him to, at some point, make a significant contribution in year 1? Is that a pretty standard thing across the board?
Well, there would be 2 ways to look at it. I mean, you would look at it if, say you had a kid who was just 20 or 21 years old, and you realize maybe there's going to be some growth to his game. With a guy like Sione, you know who he is already. He's already established. So, obviously, you can find a role for him right away. Probably he's going to play some special teams. Most of the Browns draft choices are going to play special teams. That's where that roster is at now. They're a good roster. They didn't have a lot of starting holes up for grabs. So could Sione end up taking one of those? Absolutely. But, as a player here, this is going to be something he's going to ask to do early, and obviously can set a tone in that respect. But there'll be a role for him. I would think, as long as everything goes okay with him, there should be a role. I mean, the only other competition is Christian Kirksey, and obviously, Mac Wilson was drafted in the 5th round, but, with the new defensive coordinator here, there is going to be he likes his linebackers. In Carolina, he played 3 linebackers a ton. So we could see Wilkes wanting to do some 3 linebacker sets here, in first downs, in 1st and 10 situations, and that would make Sione that 3rd man.
You feel like with the Browns, you have some continuity, right, with Freddie Kitchens and kind of what's going to be the situation there with Baker Mayfield and all those weapons, of course, OBJ in the offseason notably. Defensively, Steve Wilkes comes over from the Cardinals. So what do you expect on the defensive side of the ball with Wilkes running the show now?
Well, I mean, first things, I mean, the stakes are just raised. I mean, he brought in a player like Sheldon Richardson. Obviously, he made a trade for another pass rusher in Olivier Vernon. Their starting front four right now it looks really, really, really good on paper. Denzel Ward was lights out as a rookie. Demarius Randall, a solid free safety. They brought in a nice combination of Eric Murray and Morgan Burnett. So now Wilkes, he can play this either way. Now, he does have the tradition of obviously playing a lot of linebackers from his days in Carolina. Last year when he was in Arizona, though, he played nickel and dime over 63% of the time. So it's a really good combination here. And the thing is now the Browns are getting to the point where they have 20 to 21 to 22 players they can use in rotational fits. So everybody can kind of stay fresh, which was one of the issues they got into last year. Myles Garrett played way too many snaps. Larry Ogunjobi played way too many snaps. But now where you're in a position where you have more trustworthy guys that you can put on the field to get the appropriate rest. And look, I mean, today's NFL is all about versatility and showing different looks and not just the same thing. So it should work out for Wilkes, and Wilkes in a tough spot, obviously just 1 year in Arizona. So he's going to have a little bit of chip on his shoulder because he would like to get back to a head coaching job somewhere. But he's got all the weapons at his disposal to get this defense, and it's crazy to say it, but for the most part, the Browns were a better statistical defensive unit when they went 0-16 in 2017 than they were last year when they went 7-8-1. It's crazy, but there's a lot of truth to it.
That is crazy. Wow.
That is insane. Let's talk expectations with the offseason moves and now after the draft. If you were to gauge just the general consensus of the fans, are the Cleveland Browns expected to make the NFL playoffs?
I believe there's no way you should be thinking about anything else but the playoffs this year. Last year it's 7-8-1. Last year was a much more difficult schedule than the schedule they're about to face this year. So obviously Vernon brought in, and then Sheldon Richardson brought in the draft class they brought in. Offensively, you brought in Odell Beckham Jr. You also brought in Kareem Hunt. The offense is loaded at the skill positions. They did a great job and establishing a strong defensive line. Obviously, they acquired 3 defensive backs through the draft in Greedy Williams and Sheldon Redwine. Obviously, Takitaki and Mac Wilson. They put a lot of effort into this product, and some teams within the division had good drafts, and that's all well and good. But they're going to have to be ready to go, and there's going to be no excuses. This team is expected to win double-digit wins at minimum this year.
Jeff, great to talk to you, man. We appreciate the insight, and I hope you get a little bit of time off before all those mini camps begin, and then we're going to be in football before you know it.
Absolutely, guys.
All right, Jeff Lloyd, host of the Locked On Browns podcast. Big thanks to him for joining us on the Deseret First Credit Union Hotline. Deseret First, your values, your timeline, your financial future.